All right, welcome in. We bring in Dave Pietramala, who mutually agreed to part ways with Johns Hopkins after a legendary 2-decade career as the head coach there. Coach, I just want to start by asking, how would you describe the last few days for you?
A wave of emotions would probably be the best way. After 29 years, which is basically my whole adult life, being associated with one specific institution, they almost become an appendage and a part of your body. You become a part of them, and they become a part of you. And there's disappointment, there's anxiety, there's a whole realm of emotions. But then the other side of your brain takes over, and the rational side takes over, and you start to look at things for what they really are, and start to think about the future. So it's been, I would say, it's been indicative of the times that we're in with this COVID, disease. It's been interesting and odd, and I would probably say that's the best way to describe the last couple of days.
Right. It's sort of like you're in this new world we're all living in, but at the same time, you're in a whole new world personally, individually as well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. How would I mean? What's the reaction? You see. I guess we've seen some of the reaction for you from your perspective. What's it been like to sort of get the reaction you've seen over these last couple of days since the announcement?
That's probably the place where I get the most emotional. Is I'm not a social media guy unless it really pertains to recruiting or has something to do with that. And I have seen a lot of people have sent me, but the number of text messages, phone calls, and then the outpouring of support from former players. To be quite frank, I'm overwhelmed. I'm really taken aback by it. I don't. I'm surprised by it. I don't think any of us look at ourselves the way others do. And for me, this has been really eye-opening, and I'm so thankful for it, but really overwhelmed by it and surprised and thankful for it.
Is that sort of makes you realize sort of why you did it? Why you worked so hard, at Hopkins over the last few decades to sort of get that support. It's like, wow, you guess you made an impact.
Yeah, it absolutely is. When you get it from a guy who was a starter and was an All-American, it's easy to see. But when you get it from a young man that maybe didn't reap the benefits of all his hard work on Saturdays, and maybe didn't have the opportunity to get as much game time, and you get those same sentiments and words from a person like that, it's been really special. And I've always known why I coach. That's never been an issue. I know my core values, and they've never been in question, and I've always tried to stay to them. But to hear these guys, respond and say, "Hey, coach, we get it." I went through that transition with my coach, Don Zimmerman, and I'll never forget being at the University of Pennsylvania and having a young man come in the office to talk, and I found myself responding to him exactly the way Coach Zimmerman, responded to me. And when the meeting was over, I said, "Oh my God, I sound just like my old coach. I never would have imagined." And I called him that day and I said, "Hey, coach, I got it. I get it." And it's really satisfying to know how these guys have grown and developed. And quite frankly, that's just not me. That's all our support staff that we had at Hopkins, and trainers, and my assistant coaches, who over the years have just been unbelievable. So it's been a blessing.
In terms of, obviously addressing the team and the guys and the recruits, was that something I guess you were prepared for? I guess it's probably never an easy conversation to have with anybody.
No, and that's been a challenge. People are, right now it's an emotional time at moments, and I guess other than receiving this outpouring of support, you get emotional if you talk to a young man. I've gotten a ton of texts, and I've tried to be very respectful of Johns Hopkins process now, which is they're going to go out and look for a coach, and to coach these wonderful young men. And it's important, if I think if I'm always worried about what's best for them in the program, I need to say my goodbyes appropriately, and then allow that process to take place.
Yeah, you mentioned in the Baltimore Sun in an article with them, it was in the best interest to mutually part ways and move on for both sides. Why do you think that is on both sides of the equation here?
I've been there for 20 years, and good coaches can be at good programs, and the fit not be right. The directions you're moving in be a little bit different. Your vision be a little bit different. And after 20 years, an institution changes and a coach changes, or maybe doesn't. And it was just determined that in the best interest of the young men that are part of that program, that we responsibly and respectfully part ways.
Is it tougher the way it ended with the season being canceled? I know you can never prepare for something like that either.
Yeah, it has. You'd like to have the opportunity to stand in front of the young men you love, and I want to be clear, I love those guys. They've been wonderful. They're the best part of my day, other than my own kids, and to not have the chance to stand in front of them one last time, is challenging. But this is my opportunity to show them. This is an adverse circumstance for me. Stepping away, changing. A big part of my life, and this is an opportunity for me to show them that you attack it, one foot in front of the other. You do it with class and dignity, and you move forward. And I hope they see that as this.
Yeah, and I think I've talked to a lot of athletes since this has all gone on, and I think some of those lessons you learn as an athlete really have helped some of these guys and girls sort of deal with what's going on right now and having their season canceled. And I think a lot of them, like you just mentioned, sort of have a good head on their shoulders because of lessons like that, right?
Yeah, this whole virus thing. These are the things that we're preparing them for. My goal as a coach was to develop young men, to help them become the best version of themselves that they can be, to become the best student, the best person, and the best player. And you hope that you help them become the best men they can be, so that when they go out into the real world, which isn't very forgiving these days, they're prepared. And our hope, when our staff was together with these guys and this virus hit, was that they would go home. They would understand that this was just another challenge, but an opportunity, and an opportunity for them to grow in a different way, for them to overcome a different challenge. And now this is exactly what this is for my staff and I. It's almost time for us to practice what we've been preaching.
Yeah, right. It makes a lot of sense. How would you look back over these last 2 decades? What do they mean to you? I'm sure you've had a little bit of time, I guess, maybe not enough just yet separated from everything, but you look back over the 20 years, what sticks out?
The thing that sticks out to me most aren't the wins, the losses, and unfortunately, the losses tend to stay with you more than the wins do. It's the young men that I've had the distinct privilege to coach, the families that I've gotten to know and develop strong relationships with, the assistants that I've become, part of their families and them part of mine. So as I leave, and as any coach leaves, the one thing you can always take with you are those relationships, and I value them to the core. And I'm so thankful to have had the privilege of coaching so many spectacular young men, whether they played a minute or every minute. My care for them, and our staff, more importantly, our care for them, is authentic. And our time in the locker room and on the field and on the bus with those guys, those 6 in the morning to 9 in the morning, or those 6 at night to 9 at night conversations alone with young men, those are the things that I take with me, and those are the things I'm going to miss most.
Yeah, you impacted a lot of people for sure. I mean, you mentioned sort of looking back at some of the highs and lows, and amidst all the individuals you coached along the way. I mean, the last couple of years, were probably a little bit tougher, I'd imagine, for you. How different, I guess, is the sport compared to when you started, in just in terms of the toughness it is to be, really competitive on a year-to-year basis?
Well, it is, and parity has hit our sport, and I think things are very cyclical. Winning is hard, but winning consistently is the hardest thing. If you look at cycles, Princeton had their cycle, Syracuse has had theirs, we've had ours. We've had ours multiple times, and so have other schools. And you've got to adjust, you've got to change. You're now seeing programs pouring resources into the sport. You're seeing that in the Big Ten with the advent of the Big Ten Conference for lacrosse. You're seeing facilities being built, you're seeing academic buildings being built. So the sport is growing, and while it's still a non-revenue sport, it's becoming more and more like basketball. And there are a lot of good coaches out there. There are a lot more talented young men playing high school lacrosse than there are Division I programs. So you're seeing a trickle down effect, and that's what's making the game more challenging. And it'll continue to get like that. I mean, you look and Yale wins, and for years Yale hadn't had that kind of success. And now they're having their cycle, and it's good for the sport, certainly. When I was the head coach at Johns Hopkins, I wasn't a fan of it, only because you want your program to be successful. But it is an ever-changing landscape, and it is so different than 10 years ago. I mean, look at what recruiting's done. It's so different. It's different than 20, 30, 40 years ago. And then anybody that looks back and says, well, we should be like we were, or things should be like they were, I don't necessarily think they truly have a grasp of the landscape.
How does knowing that now sort of impact your next step personally?
Well, you know what? This opportunity, or this situation brings opportunity, and I can promise you, I have a whistle around my neck. Hopefully sooner rather than later. I'm excited for the next chapter of my life, and have an opportunity to write it. I don't know exactly what or where that will be. If there's anyone out there looking for a hard-working, good coach, I'm available. But with the uncertainty comes an opportunity, and that's what we've taught our guys from day one: is challenges, uncertainty, discomfort are all opportunities, and this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for me to be a better dad for a little while here and take a deep breath. It's a chance for me maybe to become a better version of myself, and spend some time with professional development, and doing the 3 R's, meaning reevaluate, re-energize, and reflect. So I'm excited to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And we're excited to see what's next for you as well, Coach. We thank you so much for the time and coming on today.
Yeah, you're awful kind to have me. Thanks so much, and please be safe and healthy.
You too.